Why conversations matter. Hi, it's Tim Hagen from Progress Coaching. And every single day, for years, we have talked about the value of conversations and certainly coaching. When we think about conversations at its most fundamental level, it's really 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 people talking and listening to each other. With that being said, how often are we thinking about what we want to say while somebody's talking? How often are we in group conversations where we're thinking about what we want to say and we interrupt, or somebody in the group continually interrupts other people while they're talking? Conversations drive workplace culture. I go to the value of coaching. Most of the time, we want managers to coach tactically, specifically, strategically to the performance and the behaviors they're seeking that will help their team or help their organization. Yet I'd say 80 to 90% of the time, managers will bring up things like attitude, motivation, lack of communication, lack of teamwork. They will depict specific incidents where people are not working effectively together or conversing with one another professionally and thoughtfully. So let's think about conversations just as a foundation of your organization. Do people listen to each other? Do they have conversations thoughtfully? Do they have a healthy relationship with conflict? Now, conflict is nothing more than building awareness of a tough situation where somebody has an opportunity to improve. Yet, how often do we approach people emotionally because we're frustrated? And does it ever end up well? Conversations matter. One of the most foundational things an organization can do is have employees of all levels go through conversational training, practicing conversations. See, I think managers and leaders inherit people's ability or inability to converse with one another. I cannot tell you, when I do public speaking, go to projects, work with people, do group coaching programs, whatever it might be, I get the following 3 questions every single time. How do I coach someone who's resistant to change, resistant to feedback? Number 2, how do you coach 2 people who don't get along well? And here comes the big one. And if you're in upper level management, I hope you hear this. How can I have a conversation upward where it does not come back and hurt me, or does not have political ramifications? All of these are conversations, and quite frankly, they're conversations with people that are outside, typically, of their job function. That's why we subscribe to the theory, conversations make or break workplace cultures. So when you think about conversations, and let's say we have one conversation, let's dissect that for a second. A typical manager in the corporate world calls an employee in to their office. What's the employee's first response or impression of why they're being called in? Do you know I've never had anyone answer that question with the following? Oh, it's because my promotion's here and I'm going to get a lot of positive feedback. It's usually 99% of the time, uh-oh, what did I do wrong? Now think about that. Think about that. When we call somebody in, we have a manager who's giving constructive feedback. Now, I'm not against constructive feedback. What I'm against is only giving constructive feedback. One of the great studies done by the Gallup organization reports when we lead with positive feedback and leveraging people's strengths, people engage 8 times more. So it begs the question, what are we trying to accomplish by calling people into our office to tell them what they're doing wrong, what we've observed that needs to be fixed? Now, those things need to occur. Here's the funny thing about the power of conversation. If you're a manager who's done this, we've all done it. This is not about criticism. This is about an opportunity to gain perspective and gain awareness of where we have opportunities to engage more conversationally with our people. When we bring somebody in and we're going through some bullet items of what they did wrong and what they need to improve and where their results are lacking, and the employee is nodding, you know what's really happening? We as leaders sometimes have this false impression that they're nodding because they really agree with us. You know what they're nodding for? To agree so the meeting will end. Doesn't mean they agree or disagree. They just want to get the heck out of there. That's why conversations matter. So here's the funny thing about this case study. Call someone in, we give them constructive feedback, we tell them where things are lacking. And what we do as leaders is we tend to think it's over. Oh, no. That conversation is about to take on a whole new life form. Because that employee goes back to the work area and the employees say, what did the boss say? And here's where the emotional interpretation and spinning starts. It takes that conversation from maybe really good intentions to a steroid level of unbelievable negative depiction. Well, he just really was, slamming me. He just doesn't care. He didn't give me a chance to talk. And guess what they do? They tell 3 or 4 people. And let's say that boss comes up or that leader comes up somewhere in the lunchroom. And this is where the typical, I heard statement comes in. Oh, I heard from a couple people in that department, he's a real jerk. And those 3 or 4 people at the lunch table tell a couple other people. That conversation will take on a life form sometimes between 10 and 20 versions. So then you might be asking, well, okay, great. We understand. Then what do we do? So let's go back and let's say we have to only give constructive feedback in a conversation. When we give constructive feedback, we can ask questions to confirm agreement or disagreement, embracement or resistance. So when you look at somebody and say, here are the areas where I think you have an opportunity to improve, hearing this, what goes through your mind? Where do you feel like we have some agreement, and maybe where you have some areas where we can clear up some gray areas between us in terms of expectations? Always remember, when we have conversations, start with strengths. Going back to the Gallup organization, here's a technique called dovetailing. Bob, here are the 3 things I love about working with you. You do A, B, and C well, and I would love to add time management to those lists of strengths. Hearing that, where do you feel like you have an opportunity to improve your time management, and what could we do together? That's why conversations matter. Sometimes we just show up and we just kind of point out what's wrong, or we just kind of say what's on our mind, and we have a failure to understand that conversation is about to go into a different life form without confirmation, without understanding of how the person we're conversing with is feeling or accepting. So think about that. You end the conversation. What can we do together? And you leave it on a positive note. Here's the funny thing. When you leave things on a positive note, here's the funny thing about human beings. They don't feel the need to share it with other people now because it's not negative. And there's so many statistics out there. You hear people say when they hear something negative, we tell up to 20 people. When we hear something positive, sadly, we only tell 3 or 4 people. Now, I don't know what the right statistic is, but that is human nature. So here's some strategies. Call people in for the good stuff, and only the good stuff. Number 2, call people in for the good stuff and have your boss there. Watch your employee freak out and then praise them. Only praise them. Guess what happens? Trust in relationships just skyrocketed. Your brand as a leader and a manager just skyrocketed. So our next coaching book coming out is called Why Conversations Matter in the Workplace. Sign up for our newsletter. We're going to be offering a preliminary copy to our newsletter subscribers. So below this video, I hope you'll complete the form and join our newsletter, and we will be giving some information here in the next 60 days. Keep in mind, conversations matter. We've got jobs to do. But if there's ever been a time with this pandemic crisis that has taught us one thing, is that people are scared, they want to be listened to, they want to have conversations, they want to engage, they want to improve. Conversations matter. And its most fundamental aspect, I always love to share this, and I think we're all guilty of this, present company included. Make sure you're actively listening, not just hearing their words, but stating back and paraphrasing what they said and what they meant. It absolutely skyrockets this nebulous thing called trust. Good luck.